Hera, daughter of Cronus and Rhea, queenly, regal, uncompromising. A goddess who embodied marriage, sovereignty, and feminine authority. Zeus wanted her not merely as a lover, but as a consort. She rejected him repeatedly, adamantly, unshaken by his power. So Zeus resorted to strategy, not seduction, not force, strategy. He transformed himself into a small, drenched, trembling cuckoo bird, feathers ragged and pathetic. He perched upon Hera's windowsill in a storm crafted for this very moment. Hera saw the shivering creature, felt sympathy rise within her, and cupped it gently to her breast to warm it. The moment she did, Zeus discarded his disguise. He transformed back into his true form, massive and blazing with godhood, and forced himself upon her. The myths do not soften this moment. Hera was violated. Hera was enraged. Hera was humiliated. And yet, in the harsh logic of ancient divine custom, Hera believed that the only way to restore her honor was to marry Zeus. Their wedding became the greatest celebration the gods had ever held. Every deity was invited. The mountains shook with music. Rivers shimmered with dancing nymphs. Flames spiraled into the air in bright columns as if the world itself was applauding. Gaia herself offered a gift to Hera, a tree bearing golden apples, radiant fruits that glowed with an inner fire. These apples would live on in myth after myth, coveted by heroes, guarded by monsters, and associated forever with divine immortality. After the wedding, Zeus and Hera retreated to Samos for their honeymoon. Mortals later measured that sacred time as 300 years. 300 years of union, of conflict, of passion, of early attempts to bind their natures into something resembling harmony. During those centuries, Hera would bathe in the spring of Canathos to renew her maidenhood, preserving a symbolic purity that myths often described but rarely explain. Some said it was a ritual tying her to the eternal cycles of marriage. Others believed it restored her strength and dignity after difficult moments with Zeus. Whatever the truth, the spring became a sacred site known for rejuvenation and mystery. While they were hidden away in their long honeymoon, the world above did not stand still. Zeus built the mechanisms of divine rule. He established the foundations of kingship, the codes of hospitality, the laws of oath and retribution. He shaped the sky into a vault of thunder clouds that responded to his will. He trained eagles to serve as his heralds, and he forged alliances with gods and spirits who preferred order to chaos. Poseidon crafted storms and calmed seas, sculpted islands, and fathered mighty creatures. Hades built his dark kingdom into a structured labyrinth of revers, judges, and regions for souls of every kind. The earth settled. Civilization began its quiet crawl toward existence. Divine politics simmered into a cautious equilibrium. And through it all, Zeus stood at the center like the axle of a cosmic wheel, turning relentlessly, radiating power, desire, authority, and unpredictability. When Zeus and Hera emerged from their long retreat, they took their place upon twin thrones on Mount Olympus. The air around them crackled with tension, love and rivalry, passion and politics. Two titanic wills bound together in a union that was as creative as it was destructive. Together, they would shape the ages to come. Their children would become gods whose names echoed across centuries. Their battles would shake Olympus. Their reconciliations would soften the edges of divine fury. Their story was the story of marriage in all its complexity, etched onto the sky in thunder and cloud. But for now, the world had finally entered the true beginning of the Olympian age. The Titans were defeated. Succession had paused its bloody cycle. The universe was divided. Wisdom had been swallowed. Justice had been born. Memory had sung its first notes. Fate had woven its first mortal threads. The seasons had begun their eternal dance. The muses had opened the floodgates of creativity, and Zeus, king of gods, had married Hera, queen of heaven. The cosmos settled beneath their reign. But peace among gods was always fragile. In the shadow of Olympus, new stories waited to unfold. The birth of Apollo and Artemis, the jealousy of Hera, the forging of divine weapons, the early wars of gods and giants, the shaping of humanity, the rise of heroes. The newly crowned rulers of the universe had barely begun their rule, and the myths of the next age were waiting just beyond the horizon, simmering with the promise of triumph, tragedy, and the impossible beauty that only Greek myth could conjure.
The long honeymoon of Zeus and Hera had ended. Their 3 centuries of seclusion on Samos, a stretch of divine time measured in mortal awe rather than mortal years, dissolved like the last glow of twilight. The king and queen of the cosmos returned to Olympus, and with that return, the world felt an unmistakable shift. The throne room of the gods, suspended high above the mortal realm in its permanent cloak of white mist, came alive with new intensity. Thunderheads rolled lazily round its foundations. Winds curled up the mountainside like curious serpents drawn toward the scent of destiny. Zeus sat upon his throne with the confidence of a god who believed he had conquered every threat worth fearing. Hera settled into her own seat beside him, crowned in all the splendor befitting the Queen of Heaven, yet carrying within her the simmering complexity of a goddess whose marriage was both triumph and wound. Olympus itself seemed eager for what came next. The new age of the gods was finally underway, and with it came a cascade of stories, births, rivalries, alliances, battles, and creations that would define the character of this fresh cosmic order. The earliest days of their reign were marked by a delicate equilibrium. Zeus governed the heavens with the authority of a storm. Hera governed marriage, sovereignty, and the intricate politics of divine society. Their rule was not quiet, but it was structured. Music rose from the muses in steady currents. The Horae guided seasons and civilization with careful hands. The Moirai wove the threads of mortal life with calm inevitability. It was during this period of relative calm that the first of Zeus and Hera's children entered the world. Their daughter Hebe was the first to grow under the glow of Olympus. Hebe, goddess of youth, carried an aura of fresh springtime about her. Mortals later imagined her as the divine cupbearer who served ambrosia and nectar, but those tales were only the smallest glimpse of her presence. Hebe represented renewal, vitality, and the soft first breath of life itself. Around her, flowers opened unseasonably. Leaves brightened. Even the immortals seemed more radiant when she walked by, as if her presence dusted their eternal forms with the blush of early dawn. Eileithyia followed soon after, the goddess of childbirth. Her arrival brought a deeper weight to Hera's domain. Eileithyia was the one who stood beside women in moments of life's most fragile passage, guiding infants into the world and shaping the earliest spark of mortal existence. Her realm was profound, teetering between pain and miracle, between the cries of labor and the cries of new life. Mortals prayed to her with trembling intensity, for they knew she governed the razor-thin space between life and death in a way even Zeus could not fully command. Then came Ares, the god of war. Ares was fire given a heartbeat, chaos given flesh. He carried within him the fury of storm winds and the destructive vigor of a battlefield. He represented the raw, unrefined violence of conflict, a contrast to Athena, who would later embody strategy and disciplined warfare. Where Athena would think, Ares would charge. Where Athena would plan, Ares would ignite. His birth brought a new edge to Olympus, a sharpened spear point glinting in the heart of eternity. Some say that Eris, goddess of strife, was born beside him, a twin flame that flickered in perfect opposition. In many traditions, she was the daughter of Nyx alone, born from the depths of primordial darkness. Yet in others, she was Ares' sister by blood, child of Hera and Zeus, a goddess whose nature stood on the shadowy border between divine tension and cosmic necessity. Eris represented the friction that shaped destinies, the disagreements that forged change, the competitions that forced mortals and gods alike to rise, transform, or fall. These children marked the first generation of Olympus under Zeus and Hera's joint rule. But the calm they brought was deceptive. Beneath the polished ivory halls, something else was growing. Something that would carve a deep divide in the marriage that was already strained by Zeus's countless infidelities and Hera's bruised pride.